Hello and welcome to the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota's webinar on Social Security Disability. My name is Debbie Leone and I want to welcome you here tonight. I am the Information Services Manager for EFMN, and we are very excited tonight to be partnering with the Social Security Administration to bring you this webinar. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get our PowerPoint going. Where'd it go? Okay, great. Hopefully you can all see that now. Again, as I said, Social Security Disability is our topic tonight. A few housekeeping items I'd like to run through real quickly before we get started. The webinar will be 1 hour and 15 minutes long, and just to make sure you have the best webinar experience possible, we do encourage you to close out any windows that you might have open, especially things that might use a lot of bandwidth, things like streaming services or music applications. That will just make it easier and better quality for you. We are going to provide you with a certificate of attendance. We will email that out to you within 3 business days after this webinar. And we are recording this webinar, and a link to request that recording will be posted on the EFMN website within the coming weeks so that you can view again in the future, or other people might be able to view it as well. You will notice that we have closed captioning activated. If those captions bother you and you don't want to see them, just go ahead and click on the CC icon. It should be at the bottom of your screen, and you can choose to hide the subtitles there. I want to let you know that while the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota is hosting this webinar, all of the content and discussion points are led and delivered by our speaker from the Social Security Administration. The information shared is to inform you about various aspects of Social Security disability. However, details of your specific disability application should be discussed directly with your local SSA office or with the disability attorney or advocate. We do encourage you to ask questions during the webinar, and you can do that by clicking on the Q&A icon. Again, you should find that at the bottom of your screen. That will bring up a box where you'll be able to type in your question, as you can see here on the screen, and then you'll hit send. We are going to hold those questions until the end of the webinar, so we'll answer them all together. But please, as you think of them throughout the presentation, go ahead and type them into the Q&A. One thing you should know is that our speaker is not going to be able to address questions about your individual eligibility for disability benefits. For that reason, and to respect everyone's privacy, please keep your questions general and not specific to your own or a loved one's disability application. Also, please do not enter any kind of personal identifying information like your date of birth or your Social Security number into the Q&A. Just keep it just to your questions. Also, if you happen to have any kind of technical issues during the webinar, you can use that Q&A box also to let us know about that. Mary Mavison, who is our executive assistant, is here with us behind the scenes off camera, and she can help with any of those types of technical issues you might run into. And just for your information, to avoid any kind of confusion, the chat feature on your screen has been disabled. You'll only be able to use the Q&A to communicate with us. I want to go through our objectives for tonight's webinar. They are to learn the differences between SSDI and SSI, how to qualify, who's eligible, and what benefits are available, to understand the application process and where you can get help, to identify common reasons for denial of benefits and how to appeal, and to explore the possibilities for employment while receiving disability benefits. Our presenter tonight, we are very excited to have with us. Sarah Cavallo is the Social Security Area Work Incentives Coordinator for Minnesota and Northern Wisconsin. She speaks and educates individuals about Social Security disability programs and the opportunities for those who want to return to work after being found disabled. Prior to her current role, she was a technical expert in various field offices working directly with beneficiaries. This involved processing retirement, Medicare, and survivors' claims along with disability applications. She's worked for Social Security for over 21 years and has a wide knowledge of all Social Security programs. So again, we're thrilled to have Sarah here with us tonight, and I will turn things over to you now, Sarah.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie. I appreciate that kind introduction. So my name is Sarah Cavallo. I work for Social Security, and we have a lot of information to present you with tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and just get right to it. So I'm going to start with a few just interesting facts. Did you know that about 178 million workers will pay Social Security taxes in 2022? Next slide, please. There we go. About 178 million workers will pay Social Security taxes. That means about 94% of all people that work are covered by Social Security. There's a few like localities, um, state governments that do not pay into the Social Security system, but the majority of people do pay into the Social Security system. And then, of course, once you pay in, eventually you will receive a benefit from Social Security. So each month, next slide, please. Yeah, each month, 62.2 million people receive a Social Security benefit. And that could be retirement, disability, auxiliary benefits like spousal benefits or survivors benefits. We also house the SSI or Supplemental Security Income Program, and that each month we pay 5.2 million people an SSI benefit. Then there is a small amount, and by small I mean 2.6 million people who receive a combination of both Social Security and SSI. So before we start talking about disability, the first thing we need to do is define it. Um, and the reason we define it is because the definition of disability for Social Security might be different than how your doctor defines disability, or it might be different than how your long-term insurance company or VA or unemployment or various other entities you might work with define disability. So for Social Security disability, uh, the definition has two parts, and you have to meet both parts in order to qualify. So first of all, you have to be unable to work due to a severe medical condition that has lasted or is expected to last at least 1 year or result in death. So, you could break your leg, and that is most definitely a disabling condition, but it's probably a disabling condition for a month or two. Right? It's not a long-term disability. So you do have to have more of a long-term disability. And then the second part of the definition is that due to that condition, it must prevent you from doing substantial gainful employment. So that means work that you did in the past, but it must also prevent you from adjusting to other work. I've met with people that have very defined disabilities, but they're working above that substantial gainful employment amount, and they're working in spite of their disability. But because they are able to perform substantial gainful employment, they don't meet that definition of disability. So what is substantial gainful activity? Like, how do we determine that? So it's a term that Social Security uses to basically just describe a level of work activity and earnings. And if you are consistently above this amount, that can lead to ineligibility for disability benefits. So we basically define substantial gainful activity as a dollar amount. So if you are not blind, then that dollar amount is $1,350 in 2022. If you work for an employer, meaning you get a paycheck and they take the taxes out and you get a W-2 at the end of the year, that is gross, 1,350 gross. So what you make, not what you take home. If you are self-employed or maybe a contract employee that reports their earnings as self-employment, that 1,350 is net. So your gross amount minus your expenses. If you are blind, that amount is higher. It's $2,260 per month. So SSI, supplemental security income, only uses this SGA amount to measure work during the initial claim. So when you first apply for SSI. Now SSDI will use that SGA amount throughout the life of the claim. So now we have two other terms that I'd like to define, and that is SSDI and SSI. So these are the disability programs that are housed at your local Social Security office. So the first one, SSDI, is sometimes referred to as Title II and stands for Social Security Disability Insurance. So SSDI provides benefits to disabled or blind persons who have made contributions to the Social Security system. They've made contributions to the Social Security trust funds, and these contributions are based on your earnings. Now, the benefit amount here can vary because your benefit amount is based on the amount you have contributed to the Social Security system. If you receive an SSDI benefit, there are sometimes benefits payable to family members in your household. And if you qualify for SSDI, you will also qualify for the Medicare program. Now, Medicare is the federal health insurance program. You do have to be receiving SSDI for 2 years or 24 months before you qualify for Medicare. The second program we have in the office is sometimes referred to as Title 16 or SSI, which is Supplemental Security Income. And SSI makes cash assistance payments to the aged, blind, disabled, and children who are disabled and have limited income and resources. So it's a needs-based program. The funding for SSI comes from general tax revenue. So even though it is housed in the Social Security office, the funding of SSI does not come out of the Social Security Trust Fund. So if you qualify for SSI, then most likely you will also be eligible for Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is the state-run health insurance program. So most, I'm trying to think if any of our beneficiaries in SSI or in Minnesota that qualify for SSI would not be eligible for Medicaid, and I do not think that's the case. Now, SSI, since it's needs-based, it's not based on contributions. There's a max amount payable on SSI, and that is $841 a month. And that amount can be affected by any other income you have coming into the households. So what are the requirements for getting each of these programs? We're going to start with SSDI. So to be eligible for SSDI, you have to meet 2 different earnings tests because this is the program that's based on your contributions into the Social Security system. You have to have a recent work test and a duration of work test. I'm going to start with the duration of work test because it is similar to the retirement test. Many people are familiar with Social Security retirement. And for Social Security retirement, you pay in 40 credits. You can earn up to 4 credits a year by working. A credit is $1,510 per month. So on average, if you've worked 10 years, you will qualify for a retirement benefit. That's a duration of work test. So if you are basically 30 or over, that duration of work test is the same for disability. It's basically 40 credits. If you're younger than 30, it is less. It's kind of a sliding scale as you work your way down. For retirement, you just have to work the 10 years and you will qualify for a retirement benefit at age 62. So let's say you work from 18 to 28, okay? So you've paid in your 40 credits for retirement. And then, I don't know, you win the lottery, you have a rich uncle you didn't know about, that leaves you everything. And you stop working at the age of 28. At 62, you will qualify for a retirement benefit because you only have to have the duration test to qualify for a retirement benefit. Disability is a little different. Not only do you have to have that duration test, you also have to have a recent work test. So you have to have been working basically 5 out of the last 10 years. And again, that's for someone that's approximately over the age of 30. It's less if you're under 30. Um, so let's use our same example. We have this individual that worked from 18 to 28, so he can get that retirement benefit at 62, but he stops working at 28, and then at 50 he becomes disabled. He would not qualify for SSDI because he doesn't have the recent work the recent work test. Sometimes I compare it to car insurance. If you are paying your car insurance, you have insurance on your car. If you stop paying your car insurance, your insured status runs out. And so that's kind of what the recent work test is. You keep that up by working and paying your Social Security taxes into the system. If you are not paying your Social Security taxes into the system, eventually that recent work test, your insured status for disability runs out. Now, blind workers only have to meet that duration of work test. Really, if you have a consistent work history, you're insured for SSDI. But if you have questions about it, you would want to contact your local office. Now, if you get SSDI, there are also potentially benefits for your family. Now, this is an additional benefit and does not affect the primary wage earner's benefit at all. So whether your family gets benefits or not, you would get the same amount. So additional benefits potentially payable would be to a spouse at age 62, at any age if they are caring for a child who is under the 18 or a child who is disabled. Divorced spouses can also qualify. But remember what I said about how auxiliary benefits or family benefits do not affect the primary wage earner. And a divorced spouse does not affect anyone else receiving on the record, whether that be another spouse or a child. So don't be scared to give out that divorced spouse information. And then children are sometimes also eligible. If a child is not married and under the age of 18, they are eligible for a benefit. Under 19 is still in high school. And if they are not married and a child becomes disabled before the age of 22, they can receive something called a disabled adult child's benefit on their parent, whether that parent is disabled, retired, or has passed away. Now, to qualify for that disabled adult child benefit, an individual would have to go through the same disability process that we're going to describe here in a little bit. So that's about it for the qualifications for SSDI. So now we're going to look at the requirements for getting SSI or Supplemental Security Income. So remember, this is a program that provides payments for people with limited income and resources. So that's the first qualification for SSI, is to have limited income and few resources. So that means that you're gonna have to kind of open up the books, right? We're gonna need to know any kind of income coming into your household to qualify for this program. If you are age 65 or older, there's an aged benefit where you do not have to have a disability decision. And then, of course, you have to be blind or meet the definition of Social Security disability to get SSI. There are some different rules for children. Basically, children don't tend to have income and resources, so we do look at parents' income and resources when considering children who may qualify for SSI. So when we're looking at SSI, we look at your income, your resources, and where you live. You have to live in the United States in order to receive SSI. And my next chart, it kind of breaks down a little more what is income. So next slide, please. So when people think of income, they automatically think of work and they're like, well, I'm not working. So, I must meet the income test. And income certainly is wages or self-employment. That's earned income. But SSI also looks at unearned income. And unearned income could be Social Security benefits, whether that be disability, retirement, or survivor's benefits. It could be veterans benefits or unemployment. It could also be interest, pensions, or even cash from family and friends. And then we have resources. We also look at your resources. So that would include bank accounts, CDs, IRAs, stocks, bonds, 401ks. I mean, we need to know it all when we're considering you for SSI. Now, there are things that are excluded from resources. You have the home in which you live. So you are allowed to have a home to live in. So that, yeah, obviously, right? We should all have that. But if you have any additional property other than the home you live in, that is considered a resource that we would count. You're allowed to have a car of any value, but if you have additional vehicles, we do count those as resources. And you're allowed to have burial plots as well. Those are excluded from resources. So the limit for resources on SSI, if you are an individual, it's $2,000. If you are a couple, the resource limit is $3,000 in order to qualify for SSI. And then we also look at your living arrangements. So we look at where you live. Do you live in someone else's household? Are they paying for, your food and shelter? Do you have a spouse? Are they working? Do you live in an institution? An institution could be considered like a nursing home too. So I said that the maximum SSI was $841. If you live in an institution, then the maximum you can receive is $30. We look to see if you live in group care or board and care facility to see if they are providing food and shelter for you. So SSI requirements for children are a little different. So we're going to kind of go into the disability part of this, like how a disability decision is made. There are different requirements for children versus adults, even on the medical field. The medical decision for children is different than a medical decision for adults. So if you're under 18, we aren't going to look to see if a child can perform SGA. They just have to show that they have a physical or mental impairment that results in marked or severe limitation in functioning. That would, then they would be considered disabled. And of course, that condition that they have that results in that marked or severe limitation has to be expected to last more than 12 months. Then in addition to that, they have to be living in households that have limited income and resources. Next slide, please. Children don't tend to have a lot of income or resources, so we look at parents' income and resources. Though children can have income, and typical examples of children's income include child support, Social Security auxiliary or survivor benefits, or gifts or support they receive from friends and family. We also have an interesting little group for SSI, and it's children turning 18. And so there are two different scenarios here. We have children who are receiving SSI because they live in households that have, limited income and resources. So they are disabled. They were found disabled under the children's criteria for SSI. But now that they are turning 18, they have to have a determination based on adult criteria. criteria. So Social Security reaches out to them to do the paperwork to make an adult decision. But we also have children who may have looked into SSI, or their parents looked into SSI when they were under 18, but they didn't qualify because the parents' income and resources was too high. Well, at 18, we no longer count the income and resources of the parents for eligibility. So then we get children that might not have qualified before when they turn 18 file for SSI. Now, if they do continue to live with the parent, their SSI payment might be lower. Um, and that is because the parent, if they aren't paying their fair share of food and shelter. So those kids that did definitely have a defined disability but didn't qualify before they turned 18 can file for SSI at age 18. So a question I often get is, which one do I apply for? Do I apply for SSI or do I apply for SSDI? Or can I only apply for SSI and not SSDI? And so the answer to that is it's not really a choice. When you file an application, we are required by law to look for entitlement on all programs. And if there is entitlement to any kind of SSDI program, you are required to file for that first. And then if there are additional benefits payable on the SSI program, then we will also take that application for SSI. And that second chart that I showed you, where it showed that little sliver of people who received both SSI and SSDI, that would kind of be what happens here, where maybe your SSDI benefit is less than that $841 a month. So we would pay you the SSDI first and then bring you up to the $841 with the SSI program. So that is something that will be decided when you apply. One thing I should mention, that even if you do only qualify for SSI initially, eventually you might become entitled to an SSDI benefit. And even if you're already on SSI, if you become eligible for an SSDI benefit, you will be required to file for that, or else your SSI will stop. So when should you apply for disability benefits? Apply as soon as possible. So either when you become disabled, or if you have had a disability for a long time but have been working above that substantial amount, apply as soon as you are not working above that substantial amount. Processing an application takes a while. I have here 3 to 5 months, but I checked with our DDS, our disability division, and they're saying 4 to 5 months. They've even just taken out that 3. So you want to file as soon as you can. Now, it's not a guarantee, but of course, the more information we have, that always helps us process an application faster if we're able to do that. So how do you apply for SSDI and SSI? And this would be adult beneficiaries. The first way is you can create an online MySSI SSA account and then file your application online at ssa.gov. This is for people who are familiar with computers and are very self-directed, that like inputting information into the system. It's a great tool for that. If you are unfamiliar with computers, or it just makes you nervous, then you can always call our 800 number and make an appointment with your local office. Regardless if you file online or if you call, the forms that you will fill out is an application for benefits. You'll always fill out an application for SSDI. Sometimes you can fill out that SSI application online. Sometimes it doesn't work, but that's okay, because a person looks at it, and if they think you might qualify for SSI, they will contact you to do that SSI application over the phone. The second thing you complete is a disability report, and that asks for your medical information, medications, things like that. Now, can we go back to that other slide real quick? Thank you. So when you call and make your appointment, be aware, or if that's what you want to do, if you want to file over the phone, um, be aware that many offices in Minnesota, our appointments are 3 to 4 weeks out. So it is April 27th today. If you called and made your appointment today, you might not get in till late May. Now, even though that appointment might not happen until late May, your application is considered to have started April 27th when you made that appointment. So don't be discouraged if it does take you a while to get in for that appointment. If you're filing online, your application is to have considered started the date you start the application, even though, some people can get it done right away. Some people, it takes them a few days or a few weeks to complete that application. I'd also like to just talk a little bit about the status of our offices. 2 years ago, our offices remained open to the public only through the phone or online. Our lobbies closed due to the pandemic, so we were not seeing people face to face. About 2 weeks ago, that changed, and our lobbies are open to the public, but we are following CDC standards, which means we have a limited people in the lobbies. So if you come into our office, you may be asked to wait outside. And also due to staffing, since many of our staff are still working from home, even if you come in, we might need to schedule you an appointment. So you'd come in the office, we'd schedule you an appointment like, hey, we're gonna call you on this day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, if you are what we consider a vulnerable population, meaning you don't have adequate phone service, you don't have adequate internet connections, or you have housing instability, we will definitely make you an appointment for the office. Another thing is if you do come into the office, everybody does have to be masked regardless of vaccination status. Okay, so that's for adults. Now, what if you are a child wanting to file for SSI? There is no online application for an SSI beneficiary under the age of 18. So you will need to call and schedule that appointment. And if you do want to complete the disability report with the medical information, that is available online, but that's not filing. You actually have to have the appointment in order to file the application. So what should you have ready before you apply? And I would encourage you to have this ready, even if you're going to file online. That way you won't be someone who, it takes you 2 weeks to gather all the information and submit your application. But you definitely want to have this ready before your phone appointment as well. And that's because, phone appointments can be an hour or more. And so by having this information ready, you're just going to reduce that amount of time you have to spend on the phone. So and just a piece of notebook paper. This doesn't have to be anything formal. You need the names, addresses, and approximate dates of all the clinics you've been to in the last few years. Usually we go by clinics and not by doctors, because even if you see several doctors in that same clinic, we can just send the medical release to that clinic. And then when I say approximate dates, I mean approximate, and we just need the first date you were seen there, the last date you were seen there, and the next date you're going to be seen there. Some people get really hung up about the dates, and I met people that are awesome with dates, and I asked them, when were you first seen here, and they know that they were seen there June 5th, 2018 at 3:02 in the afternoon, and great, put that down. But if you're more like me and don't remember all that information, if you just know you were there in June of 2018, put that down. If you know you were there in the summer, great, put that down, summer 2018. If you just know you were there in 2018, just put 2018 down. So just approximate dates. Don't get hung up. Don't call your clinic and try to find exact dates. Just give us an idea. Just what I would tell you not to do is put question marks or not answer it at all. Make sure you put in full and alternate names of the claimant. So if you go by a nickname or a middle name, or you've changed your name legally or due to marriage, make sure we know about all that. And then we also need a list of your current medications. So just the medications you're on, not everything you've been on in the past, jobs you've held in the last 15 years, guardianship papers, if applicable, and school information if you have an IEP. So now you have either filed your application online or you've had your phone appointment. So what happens next? So first of all, we review your application to make sure you meet the basic requirements for disability. So this means checking whether you've worked enough years to qualify and evaluate any current work activities. So do you meet that insured status for SSDI? For SSI, we'll check to see if you meet the income and resource requirements. These are all called non-disability requirements, and you have to meet these non-disability requirements before we even send it for a medical decision. So if you aren't insured, and you have $80,000 in the bank, you aren't going to qualify for either SSDI or SSI. Your claim will be denied in the office, and it won't even go for a medical decision. We're not saying you aren't disabled. You could have a very defined disability, but you don't meet the non-medical criteria for the programs. So if you meet all the non-medical criteria, then what we'll do is we will forward your application to the Disability Determination Services, which is an office of the state, and they will contact your medical providers, obtain your medical records, and they'll probably send you some additional paperwork to complete. Now, what is the Disability Determination Services? It is an office of the state, and they are who make our medical decisions for us. Next slide, please. The person you talk to at your appointment, if you have a phone appointment, is not the person who makes the medical decision. Though that is done by a state agency. So they make that decision. They have doctors at the state agency and disability specialists that get all your information and consider all the facts of your case, and then they use that evidence to make a decision. Now, even though they are an office of the state, they make their decisions based on federal criteria, and that's important. So that means it doesn't matter if you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin, you're gonna get the same decision because it is based, all their decisions are based on federal criteria. So what kind of things does the disability determination look at? So this is their 5-step process. They look to see if you're working SGA, then they'll look to see if you have a severe impairment, and does that impairment meet or equal a federal listing? So if it does meet or equal a federal listing, then it's approved. If it does not, then they look to see if this impairment allows for past work that you've done. And then it will also look to see if you can adjust to other types of work in the community. So that is their 5-step process for making a decision. Now, as far as the listings, the federal listings, this is all open information. This is not hidden at all. You can go to ssa.gov, and there's something called the Blue Book that will have all the adult listings and all the childhood listings, and they will outline the criteria that is used to make a medical determination. So how can you help us during this process while we're making a decision? The best thing you can do is inform us about changes. You need to let us know if you change your, phone or address. DDS sends out additional forms to complete. So that's another thing. If you get an envelope in the mail from the state of Minnesota, don't just assume it's trash and put it in the recycling. Remember that they will be sending you forms to complete, but they can't send you those forms if they don't have the right contact info. We also need to know about medical updates. Now, we don't need to know if you are seeing your same doctor doctors that you already told us about. But if you go to a brand new clinic, we're not going to know about that unless you tell us. Or if you get diagnosed with a new condition, we will not know about that unless you update us. Complete those necessary forms. There's one in particular that DDS sends you. It's called an activities of daily living. Go into detail on this form. If you're having trouble, have a friend or family member help you go into detail on this form. And then also go to a consultative examination if it is scheduled. Sometimes the DDS has questions about your condition that just aren't answered in your medical records. And if that's the case, they will set you up for a consultative examination. This is a doctor in the community that we pay for an examination or an evaluation. Now, it's an evaluation, it's not treatment. So if you are unable to coordinate transportation or get to the exam because life happens, just make sure you notify the DDS examiner right away. Don't just not show up, and don't just not notify DDS that you weren't able to go. Make sure you let them know so they can reschedule, because if you don't show up, it is a denial. And then any request, just respond promptly. You're going to get a better decision and you're going to get a faster decision if you respond promptly. So once DDS makes their decision, they send it back to the Social Security office, and we kind of review it again and make sure you still meet all the non-medical criteria. And then if you're approved, you get a letter showing your benefit amount, when your payments start, and your reporting responsibilities. And then if you're not approved, you get a letter telling you how to appeal the determination if you don't agree with it. So how are you going to appeal that decision? Well, first of all, before we talk about appeals, I want to just address something I've heard ever since I started with the agency in 2000, and that is that everybody gets denied the first time. That is not correct. It's not efficient. Oh my goodness. And actually, the stats for approvals are better. I reached out to DDS to get our most recent stats. Prior to this, which was probably 5 years ago, I'd heard that 38% of initial claims were approved at the initial level the first time. Well, that's definitely not a lot. It's not zero. And actually that has gone up to 44% are approved the first time around at the initial level. But if your claim is one of those that is not approved at the initial level, the next step would be a reconsideration. Now you can file both for the reconsideration and the hearing online. But for reconsideration, your case simply goes back to DDS and a different set of eyes looks at it. And, you know, I said 44% were approved the first time around. So that leaves what, 56% that weren't. I don't have the stats on how many of those denied claims the reconsideration is actually filed. But of those reconsiderations that are filed, 11% are reversals. So they're reversed from a denial to an allowance. So it's definitely worth your time to file that appeal. Appeals must be filed within 60 days of the denial. If not, then you usually have to start over again. And I get it, it can be discouraging if you get that denial letter, but you need to file that appeal if you're able. And that's because of that filing date we talked about earlier. By filing your appeals, you preserve that original date you called. If you called today, April 27th, you're preserving that date during your appeals for when your claim starts. So that can affect your back pay, right? If you don't file within the 60 days, you know, then you file a new claim again, and you're just starting over with a new filing date much later. If you're denied at the reconsideration level, then you can request a hearing before an administrative law judge, or ALJ. You sometimes hear that called. There is also the review by the appeals council that would be above the ALJ, and the final level appeal would be a federal court review. All right, so we've talked about what Social Security is, how you qualify for it, the process for applying for disability, and how you appeal it. So now I'm going to speak to individuals who are already on Social Security Disability or SSI. So it's kind of like, now what? I've been approved for SSDI or SSI. Am I just going to do nothing, sit at home? For most people, I mean, I've worked here close to 22 years, and with working with beneficiaries, I have found that most individuals on disability want to work. Now, maybe they can't work at their old job. Maybe they can't work full time. Maybe they need, you know, a reduced work schedule, but most individuals want to work. But the reason individuals do not work when they're receiving benefits is they're worried about losing that guaranteed support every month, and they're worried about their health insurance. So work incentives are employment support provisions, and we want to help beneficiaries enter or re-enter or stay in the workforce by protecting their eligibility for cash payments or health care. I'm going to give a shout out to the Ticket to Work program. So this is a benefits counseling program for persons with disabilities who want to work and plan their employment. So I live in a Social Security bubble. I can tell you how work affects your Social Security, but I can't necessarily tell you how it affects your housing, or if you get food stamps, or other healthcare options you might have. Ticket to Work can counsel you on how work might affect all of these things, and they can also help you with obtaining employment by referring you to vocational rehabilitation or assisting you with other support services, like maybe getting a job coach or transportation, things you may need to get or keep a job. This is a free and voluntary service, and everybody who is on SSI or SSDI from the ages of 18 to 65 qualifies for this program. So everybody, when they go on, gets a letter and it says, congratulations, you have a ticket to work. And then I get a frantic phone call. And that's because it's like, I just can't work right now. I'd like to, but I'm trying to figure out my medication, and there's just a lot going on right now. I'm going through rehabilitation right now. I'm just not able to. That's fine. That's fine. This is here when you need it. You can use it if you want to, or you don't have to use it, either because due to your disability, you don't feel you can return to work, or maybe you just find a job on your own and you don't need the ticket services. But it's a great program, and I just want to let you know it's there if you choose to utilize it. So the website is choosework.ssa.gov, and there's also a phone number there if you're interested. We have some great employment networks and counselors in Minnesota. So I'm going to run through some employment supports, and it's going to be kind of quick. I mean, quite honestly, we could talk for another hour about this. So I'm going to kind of highlight the ones that are utilized most often. So these employment supports are for SSDI and SSI beneficiaries. First of all, a subsidy. A subsidy means that while you're employed, you might not be able to do all the work that maybe a non-disabled employee would be able to do. So maybe you're only able to do 90% of the work that your coworker does. Well, that means we will only count 90% of your earnings then when looking at how your work affects your Social Security benefits. Another common one is impairment-related work expenses, or IRWEs. And these are out-of-pocket expenses that you pay for. So health insurance can't pay for them, or other disability services can't pay for them. You have to pay for them out of your pocket, and you need this in order to work. The most common IRWI is medications. So usually it's your copay. So health insurance might pick up the majority of it, but you still have to pay a copay for your medication. And what we do is we deduct that from your earnings when we are looking at how your earnings affect your Social Security. We talked about the Ticket to Work program. And we have a PASS program. We have a VOC rehab program where you can continue to get benefits even if you've been found medically improved. But I want to highlight that bottom one as well, expedited reinstatement. And so it is possible to work your way off of disability. Again, we're not saying you're not disabled, but you're working substantially for a sustained period of time. And so your benefits stop. Expedited reinstatement says that if you work your way off of benefits and within 5 years, if you have to stop work due to your same disability, we do have to get a new disability decision. We can't just reinstate you, but we will pay you benefits while we are making that decision. And so that gives a lot of people peace of mind if they are attempting to work at a substantial level. So we've also got a few employment supports that are just for SSDI beneficiaries. Remember I said that SGA applies to SSDI throughout the life of the claim. So if you are on SSDI and you want to return to work, the first thing you get is a trial work period. And this is your chance to kind of test work, right? So the trial work period is 9 months. You can work and make as much as you want, and it will not affect your Social Security at all. After you have completed that 9-month trial work period, then you go into an extended period of eligibility, or EPE. This is a 3-year period of time where if you make above the SGA limit, remember that's $1,350, you are not due a check. If you earn below the SGA limit, so maybe you're working, but you're making less than the $1,350, you are due a check. And then after that 3-year period, once you start working above SGA, your benefits are terminated. But even after they're terminated, your Medicare can continue. Now, Medicare normally comes out of your monthly benefit, but since you won't be getting a monthly benefit anymore, you would have to pay the premiums out of pocket, but it continues for, there's a weird formula for it, but it's approximately 2 years after your benefits stop that you're eligible for this Medicare coverage, as long as you continue to pay the premiums. And you only pay the premiums for part of Medicare. And sometimes that's cheaper, even if your employer offers health coverage, it's cheaper just to stay on Medicare. And even after that, like I said, it's approximately 2 years. There's an additional Medicare program that if you want to pay the full amount of Medicare, which is expensive, but sometimes still cheaper than employer health insurance or on the exchange or something like that, you can continue to pay the full amount of Medicare, because you are a disabled person. So you don't qualify for a monthly benefit because you're earning too much, but you can still get the Medicare. And just having that health insurance just can really help an individual return to work. So then I'm also going to let you know about a few SSI only employment supports. So SSI, we only look at SGA when we first take the application. And after that, we look at the earned income exclusion. So the earned income exclusion is, we don't count the first $65 of your earnings against your SSI, and then whatever's left over, we only count half of that against your SSI. I'm going to do a real quick, simple formula, hopefully, that will explain that better. So if you go to work on SSI, that doesn't mean your SSI stops. Let's say you work and you make $165 in a month. The first thing we do is subtract $65, okay? $65 is the exclusion limit, all right? So now we're down to $100. We divide that by 2, that's 50. So the amount that your SSI is reduced is $50. So if you're getting the maximum amount of $841, you're down to $791. But you've also earned $165. So your total income you're bringing into the household is $956. So even though you're working, even though it's going to reduce your SSI a little bit, your total income is greater. So work can still benefit you, even if your SSI is reduced. If you have a student earned income exclusion, students under the age of 22 can actually earn like 2,040 a month and it not affect their SSI. There is a cap of about 8,000 per year on that. So that's a really good benefit for our students. And then Medicaid while working, that's that 1619B provision. So let's say you are working, and even when we take that $65 off your earnings and divide what's left over by 2, you're making more than the SSI amount of $841. So that means you aren't due an SSI payment. Does that mean your SSI stops? Not technically. It goes into a suspense status. And if the only reason you're not receiving SSI is only because you're working, then we put you into kind of this suspense status, and that keeps you eligible for Medicaid. And so again, that's important to people. That sometimes is the difference for people, whether they work or whether they not work, is if they can keep that health insurance. So I went through all of that really fast. But if you have questions about employment supports, we have the red book. So we have the blue book for medical listings. We have the red book for employment supports, and that is on ssa.gov. Now, if you do work, you do need to report that work. The old way of doing that is we make copies of our pay stubs and we sent them in, and an SSA employee had to input all that. It can take several months due, to the amount of pay stubs received and staffing for an SSA employee to input those wages. But you have the ability to take that into your own hands, and you can, for SSI only, we have a mobile app and a telephone reporting process where you can report your earnings 1 month at a time. If it's April, you're reporting March. And then those earnings go directly to your record with no employee intervention. So that means if you do have overpayments or underpayments, or we need to adjust that check, it can get done right away. If you are not SSI only, if you are SSDI, or if you prefer to report through our website, I encourage you to create a My Social Security account. And actually, I encourage all of you to create your My Social Security account. You go to ssa.gov, and then you just go down to that left-hand little finger down there on the left-hand side, and you can create an account. Now, if you've tried to create an account in the past and had trouble, I encourage you to go back. We have 2 new ways of logging on. The old way of logging on, it asked a whole bunch of financial questions, and they were hard. They wanted to know your best friend's dog's middle name in the 3rd grade. But now it's better, still very secure, but we have 2 new ways of logging on where you will not have to answer all those weird financial questions. So for those individuals that want to report through their MySSA account, we have My Wage Reporting. And so this is for SSDI beneficiaries and SSI and concurrent recipients. You can report up to 24 months in the past. So if you are mailing in those wages and you're having some issues getting them posted to your record, you can go back and you can do it on your My Social Security account. SSI deemers. So a deemer is either a parent who's working where their wages might affect their minor child's SSI benefit, or maybe you're a spouse of someone who receives SSI, so your wages can affect their monthly benefit, you can create your own My Social Security account and report your wages on there. And then it will be reflected on your child or your spouse's account. If you are a payee, so a payee, sometimes a disabled individual is not able to handle their own finances. So we pay benefits to a responsible party to use for their welfare. So if you are a payee, someone who receives Social Security benefits for another individual, you can create your own My Social Security account and report wages for the person you are payee for. So on the next slide, you're kind of gonna see what happens when you get into your My Social Security account. You're going to be able to see the amount you're receiving, when you receive it. You can look up notices, but down there kind of on the bottom, you're also going to see report wages. So that's where you would go to report your wages. And then if you go to the next slide, so you would click there and then you would get this where, and I wanted to give you the payee option, or if you're a deemer, how you can see both yourself and the person you're payee for. Then you would choose who you wanted to report the wages for. So you can be an individual on disability working and report wages for yourself, and maybe you're payee for a family member who's on disability and also working. You can report their wages too under your own My Social Security account. So as far as your My Social Security account, even if you are not receiving disability or retirement or any kind of Social Security benefit, still go create your account. New to Minnesota, as of December, you can get replacement Social Security cards on your My Social Security account. We are one of the last states you were able to do that for, but that's been super helpful, especially in our pandemic world. Also, you're going to be able to change your name due to marriage soon, also on My Social Security. You can get your Social Security statement to verify your earnings, review estimates of retirement, disability, survivors benefits. You can get a letter saying you don't get Social Security if that's needed. And then you can also check the status of your application or your appeal. So you can file your appeals online too. I'm kind of forgetting whether I mentioned that when we talked about appeals, but you can check the status of both on your My Social Security account. If you get Social Security benefits, then of course you can get that card, report wages, get a benefit verification letter. So if you need that for housing, you want to buy a car, you want to get a fishing license, that's a big one for benefit verifications. You can print that right off of your My SSA account. You can check your benefit and payment information, change your address, phone number, direct deposit information, get a replacement social or Medicare card, replacement 1099. They're adding all kinds of things that you can see and do on your My Social Security account. So that is just one of your resources, but know and use your resources. My SSA is a great resource for you. Next slide, please. So you can find your local field office on ssa.gov. Of course, you can apply for disability on ssa.gov. We have lots of pamphlets and brochures available online. You can download them as a PDF, print them off if you prefer to read something, on paper in front of you. If you're applying for disability, reach out to your state and county social service agencies. And another agency that I really encourage is the Disability Hub. This is the state of Minnesota, and they have so much information for people with disabilities, including information on housing, transportation, working while on disability. And they can help you. They just have so many resources for individuals with disabilities. So definitely I would check out their website if you haven't already. So that was a lot of information in a very short period of time. But I'd be happy to take any questions now if we have them.
I'm muted. There we go. That really was a lot of information, and I'm telling you, I was taking notes because I thought I knew quite a bit about Social Security, but I learned a whole lot here, so I really appreciate all this. Do want to let you know we've got some questions here, so
Okay.
we'll go ahead and start on those. For disabled children under 18 years old, should they still apply for SSI or SSDI, or do they need to wait until they turn 18?
Um, it depends on the parents' income. If you know that you would not meet the income and resource limit, then you can wait until you're 18. If you have questions about whether you meet the income and resource limit, just call and make an appointment, and you can talk to someone at your local office, and they can make sure.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have another one. Whoops, wait a minute. Does applying for SSDI or SSI impact future employment or insurance if the condition improves and I'm able to stop SSDI, SSI? In other words, you're able to resume regular employment.
So yeah, it shouldn't affect any future employment. And as far as insurance, I guess I'm not sure about that. That would probably depend on your employer's insurance. I mean, yeah, I guess I don't want to speak to other people's insurance programs.
Right, right. But as far as future employment,
No,
applying for SSDI shouldn't change anything.
no, not
Great,
at all.
great. Um, okay, this is a question for me, but I'll answer it. Can the slide deck be made available for attendees after the webinar? Yes, we are going to, when I send out your certificates of completion, I will also include this slide deck with it. Let's see. What is an IEP? You mentioned an IEP at some
I
point.
did. Thank you for mentioning that. I mean, that's something I need to fix in my slides. Sometimes I use acronyms, right? That I assume everyone knows. So an IEP is an individual education plan, and it's something that the schools do for children who have disabilities. And so it's just a plan that's come up about how the school is going to support the child with a disability. And so an IEP is important, especially when we're looking at those SSI claims for children. But also for if you're applying for a disabled adult child benefit on a parent's record, an IEP is important for that as well.
Great. What are the family resource limits for SSI with children under 18? Is there a tool or something out there to compare for initial steps of whether a child would qualify?
I believe there is, and you know what? I do not know off the top of my head what the resource limits are. Let me see if I can find them real quick. But I do know. And it does depend on a few things. So I would go to our website to ssa.gov. There's a good SSI section because there's also like how many non-disabled children are in the household. That determines the resource and income limits as well. So if you go to ssa.gov, there is, you go right to the front, and there's big sections for online services, retirement, disability, and SSI. And I would go there, and I looked at those recently. But yeah, there is kind of a chart there that will tell you, dependent on who else is in that household, what the income and resource limits are.
Okay. Just had a great thumbs up here. That was a great presentation. Someone wanted to thank you. Um,
You.
I agree with that. Next question is, do you have any resources for those of us who live in North Dakota? This individual's working with a disability lawyer for their appeal, but they're wondering if there's anything that can help. is everything that you said here pretty much applicable?
Yeah, everything's great. And I'm from North Dakota, so it's great to see you here. Yeah, so everything I presented for the most part is on SSA.gov. So it should be nationwide. I mean, the only things is, I gave you that disability hub thing at the end of the presentation, and that is Minnesota specific. But at the same time, I'd still go check it out. They've got a lot of information, that could be applicable just in general for people with disabilities. But sorry, unfortunately, I have no specific resource for North Dakota.
I will tell you that I do have your name here, the individual who put that question in. I can do a little research and see if I can find anything more that's specific to North Dakota. Obviously not right this moment, but I will try to do that over the next day or so and see if I can find you any additional information of anything similar to Disability Hub MN. I know that they have websites that are specific to different states. I just don't know if there's one for North Dakota or not off the
Yeah.
top of my head. Here's another question. If I've been denied, but it shows I qualify for spousal or survivor's benefits, does that suggest my children may qualify now or if I pass away? One is almost 18 and has epilepsy as well as mental health diagnosis.
So,
And
if,
again, we know that you can't give definite,
yeah, yeah.
but in general,
So in general, so I know you may have been denied for disability benefits, but that doesn't mean that your children would not qualify for a survivor benefit off of your record, because you just have to meet the duration of work test, just the one test, kind of like a retirement test for that. So, you know, um, my guess is most likely, they would, but you would need to contact your local office to check your credits to see if they would qualify for a survivor's benefits.
okay, great. So just reach out to her local SSA office.
Mhm.
Great, thank you. Wow, we have a lot of questions here, so um, hold on, I'm messing up. I'm gonna put this in a different view so it's easier for me to move through them.
You're
Um,
doing great, Debbie.
oh, this is a question about whether one goes off disability once they reach the age of 65.
That's an excellent question. So it's not 65, it's your full retirement age, which for most people right now, I mean, it's between 66 and 67 right now. And so you do technically at that point become a retired person and not a disabled person, but it's really just a paperwork thing. Your benefit amount doesn't change, your Medicare doesn't change. Really, the only difference is that once you're a retired person and not a disabled person, you no longer have to have medical reviews. So when you are on disability, we are required by law to medically review you every like 3 to 7 years to see that you still meet the qualifications for disability. So once you reach your full retirement age, nothing changes. There's just no more medical reviews.
Gotcha.
And you don't have an earnings limit if you really you want to go at it with the work at that point.
Okay. And this is great because it's the last question I'm seeing, and that's probably all. Oh, well, actually, we have two here. I don't think we're going to have time for both. So, here's what I'd like to do. Sarah, would it be okay if since we are running out of time here, and I want to be respectful of people's time, if there are questions that we don't have time for, could I send those to you
Yeah,
and connect you with people? Because what you could do then,
absolutely.
if you sent them to me, the answers to me, I can send those answers out via email to
Yeah,
everyone so that they all have it.
absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay. Because we're down to 2 minutes, and I do have a little wrap up I want to do here. So we'll get to those last two questions. I'll get those to Sarah, and we'll get those questions and answers out to you via email. So, Sarah, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you again for agreeing to be here. Such great information. I do want to just remind people of EFMN and who we are and what we do. At EFMN, we lead the fight to overcome the challenges of living with epilepsy and to accelerate therapies to stop seizures, find cures, and save lives. I want to put a plug in for information services. If you have questions about anything having to do with epilepsy, we offer free one-on-one support, and we do that for people, individuals living with epilepsy, caregivers, professionals who work with people with epilepsy. We just address a wide variety of topics, so please don't hesitate to reach out for us. We have customized tools and resources that we will individualize those answers and try to find the answers. If we don't know them, we will do our best to get the information to you and do some research for you. We also have printed materials that are available that you can access through our website as downloads. Or if you prefer those paper copies, we can usually send those to you as well. You can reach out to our information services through this website that's on the screen right now. And then I just want to make sure everyone knows about our next Wellness Wednesday webinar, which is coming up on May 25th. And that will be on managing anxiety and depression in epilepsy. And our speaker that evening will be Sharon Mason, who is a psychologist with the Minnesota Epilepsy Group. So again, Sarah Cavallo, thank you so much for your expertise, and just this was not only great information, but presented in a way that I think was very easy to understand, and we really appreciate you being here. I want to thank everybody who registered and attended. We had great attendance for this webinar. I think it's a topic that people are really in need of, and I'm glad that we were able to provide it. So thank you all again, and have a great evening.
Thank you.